It always starts the same way. A sound you almost ignore. A soft whistle outside your window at 2 a.m. A knock that comes in threes when you know no one should be there. A figure at the edge of your yard, just far enough that you can't see his face, but close enough that he wants you to know he's watching. You tell yourself it's nothing. You lock the door. You turn off the light. And then, you see him again. In one house, a man in a mask stands in the garden, arms spread wide like a crucifix. In another, a woman hears strangers whispering her ex-boyfriend's words through unfamiliar mouths. And in a dark garage by a lake, a family wakes to the sound of something slamming the door again and again at exactly 3 a.m. They don't always break in. Sometimes they just stand there, watching, waiting, learning what scares you most. Welcome to ***, Midnight Nocturne ***, where home isn't safe, silence isn't peace, and the night is always watching back. Subscribe before they find you next. When we signed the papers, the house felt like a promise rooms that echoed with possibility, a kitchen that smelled like fresh paints and lemon cleaner, a little back garden for our rescued cat, Bella, to explore when she got brave enough. The only thing that bothered us was the property to the right, a half-renovated shell with a muddy path where a fence used to be, the old posts ripped out and stacked like bones along the wall. That gap meant our garden and the abandoned one were effectively the same space. We told ourselves we'd put up a temporary barrier on the weekend. We never got around to it. On our first night, we took our mugs outside and sat under a sky so clear we could see the seam of the Milky Way. The houses behind us were quiet silhouettes, windows like blank eyes. When I glanced up, one of those windows had a face in it. A man stood there, backlit by nothing, a cutout of a person staring directly at us. He didn't look away when we noticed him. No embarrassment, no curiosity. He had the patience of a photograph. After half an hour of pretending we didn't see him, we went inside. We laughed about it, called him Curtain Guy, said maybe he was just curious about his new neighbors. That's what you do when your body tells you to run, but you've just unpacked your life onto a new street. You translate adrenaline into jokes. A few evenings later, just as the sky went violet and the hedges turned to shadows, we heard wood scrape. The makeshift board someone had leaned between the gardens shifted aside, and 3 men stepped into our yard like they were stepping into a shop. They didn't knock, or clear their throats, or ask permission. They were already there. The youngest, maybe late 20s, carried a heavy bag that thumped against his thigh. "You girls good?" he asked, with an unnecessary smile. He offered us washing up tablets from the bag brand new, still in packaging like that explained his entrance. We said no. I tried a joke I didn't mean about having sensitive skin. He nodded, said okay, and they left the way they came, lifting the fence board with practiced hands. Later, we stared at the muddy boot prints drying on our slabs and wondered how many times they'd done the same thing when the house was empty. Bella wouldn't go near the back door after that. She'd sit in the hallway and chirp, then scuttle away if the motion light clicked on by itself. In the mornings, we'd find cigarette ends in the dirt, nowhere near our side of the garden. We told ourselves it was temporary. The empty house to the right would eventually be finished. The owner would put up a new fence. The men from behind us, always cutting through, always in a hurry, would stop treating our garden like a shortcut. One afternoon, 2 officers walked along our side path without knocking and lifted the panel into the abandoned garden. They stood there, scanning, with that bored, professional slowness people get when they've done this exact thing before. They left without a word. 2 days later, the police returned to our door properly. The house behind us had been cleared out, they said. Antisocial behavior, not just to us, apparently other neighbors too. We were relieved in the way you're relieved the first time you close a broken umbrella and tell yourself the rain will feel lighter. We weren't exactly safe, but the shape of the threat changed. A week after that, while I was in the bath, a bang outside rattled the pipes. I dressed with wet hair, leaving footprints down the hall, and found my girlfriend in the spare room with her phone pressed to the glass. "Shh," she said, and then replayed the last few seconds. In the video, a stranger in the abandoned garden pointed up at our bedroom window. The moment he saw she was watching, he ran full tilt straight toward our house, tried our door handle on the way, failed, doubled back, hurled the broken fence piece up like a seesaw, and began slamming his fists into the windows of the empty house next door. He moved like he wasn't alone, like someone was watching him perform. The police watched the video, took a statement, and left. We moved a chair under the handle. We wedged a broom across the back door. That night, at 2:16 a.m., a whistle threaded through the walls. A catcall rhythm, too practiced to be spontaneous. It was followed by a gentle tap, tap, tap on the bedroom window. We didn't go to the glass. We stared at the camera app and watched the timeline sit there dumb and blank. The system didn't catch anything. In the morning, our Ring doorbell lay face down like an insult. Someone had slid it off, popped the SD card, and set the empty shell neatly on the mat. When we called, the woman at the non-emergency line didn't sugarcoat it. Removing cameras meant planning, she said. Some people test responses before they escalate. Lock your doors. Record everything. Call us if they come back. Then the line clicked quiet, and we were left with our locks, our camera's new cloud subscription, and the echo of that word escalate in an empty kitchen. Escalation came in the shape of a figure at 11 p.m. in a black mask covering mouth and nose, hood up, arms spread wide in our garden like a crucifix cutout. His head tilted as he looked at our window. He held the pose, like he'd practiced it like a statue waiting for a prayer. We watched him on the live feed, too shocked to screen record, too scared to breathe. He said something we couldn't hear, and then walked to the opposite curb. He stood there 30 minutes, expression hidden, body language loud. When we called it in, the officer on the phone said, staring at a property isn't against the law. We hung up feeling ridiculous for wanting laws that match fear. Sleep dissolved into naps separated by noises. Every car door in the street sounded like it slammed in our hallway. Every laugh from a passing group had our names in it. Bella started hiding in the wardrobe at night and refused to come when we rattled the treat tin. Maybe she recognized the rhythm of footsteps. Maybe we did too, without admitting it. At 2:52 a.m. on a Tuesday, the house grew very, very still, and the phone buzzed with a motion alert. I said, "Please check," already knowing. Two masked men moved along the side of our house like they'd practiced the route. Flashlights flared white across our windows. One carried something long and dark that looked exactly like a crowbar, because when you're scared, you don't need metaphors. We watched their beams skim over the door frame, pause on the lock, skate across the glass, then vanish. They didn't try the handle this time. Maybe they wanted to make sure we were awake for the next part. After that, the man, always the same posture, the same stillness, stood across the street in daylight and pointed at the window as if taking roll call. He waved. He shouted things we couldn't make out. When we looked directly at him, he went blank, the way animals freeze in tall grass. It was theater, and we were the box office. We filed reports. We recorded videos. We bought more lights, more locks, more time between thought and sleep. We learned the language of squeaks and thuds our house made so we could tell when a new sound didn't belong. We asked the owner of the abandoned house if he'd put the fence back. He said of course, he meant to. He'd get someone out next week. Next week turned into next month, and fear learned to live in our hallway like a roommate. The worst part wasn't the man in the mask or the crowbar or the way the police told us we were technically okay. The worst part was the hours after each incident when nothing happened at all. The stillness had edges. My girlfriend started sleeping with her shoes by the bed. I started keeping my phone in my pocket even inside the house, because I no longer trusted the distance between the table and the door. The garden, the little patch of grass where we'd planned to host friends and pretend we were older and braver than we were, became a stage we only crossed with the curtains closed. Why us? That question always sounds helpless until you realize it might be the point. Maybe there wasn't a reason beyond availability. Two young women, a garden with easy access, a camera someone was smart enough to pop off and dumb enough to leave as a warning. Maybe we just noticed them noticing us and couldn't unsee it after that. In the end, we learned there's a difference between a house and a home. A house is walls and doors. A home is the feeling that those things hold when you turn off the light. For now, the light stays on. They called me Sunshine.
Everything is fine.
Not just one person, dozens. Strangers who shouldn't have known the name at all. It used to be a joke between me and Caleb. A sarcastic pet name he'd use when he was angry, but pretending not to be. "What's wrong, Sunshine?" he'd say, in that soft, mocking tone, the kind that sounds sweet to everyone else but sticks to your skin like oil. When we broke up, I thought I left a name behind. I changed my number, deleted social media, moved apartments. For the first time in years, I could breathe without explaining myself. That peace lasted a month. The first time I heard it again, it was at a coffee shop. The barista had dark hair, freckles, and the kind of bored friendliness people wear during morning rush hour. She looked at me, tilted her head, and said, "Good morning, sunshine." My body froze before my mind caught up. I laughed it off. Must have been coincidence, right? People say sunshine. It's not that weird. But as I walked out, her smile lingered too long, and she was still watching when I pushed the door open. A few days later, my rideshare driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, glanced at me through the mirror and asked, "You ever figure out what you were running from?" The words hit harder than they should have. It was the exact same thing Caleb once said when I told him I needed time to think. He'd smirked, leaned close, and whispered, "You ever figure out what you're running from, sunshine?" I hadn't told anyone about that. Not a soul. After that, it kept happening. A woman in the grocery store brushed past me and whispered, "You don't get to just disappear." A man in my building hummed a song Caleb used to play when he wanted to talk. Another stranger said, "Still wearing your hair like that," in passing, like he knew me. None of them looked dangerous. They just looked aware, like I was the only one who hadn't been told a secret. They all had different faces, but their eyes carried the same spark, familiar, practiced, like they were reading from the same script. I started thinking I was losing it. I told myself it was coincidence, that my brain was playing tricks. Still, paranoia has a way of creeping in quietly. I stopped taking public transport. I ordered groceries online. I even started eating cereal for dinner just to avoid leaving after dark. The walls of my apartment became both protection and prison. But then the doormat incident happened. It was a Saturday morning. I woke up, opened the door to grab a package, and froze. My doormat had been flipped upside down. That might sound harmless, except the underside had something written on it in messy blue pen. Asterisk. You can change your face too, if you want. I'll still recognize you. An asterisk, I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just closed the door and stood there shaking, hand on the knob. I could almost hear Caleb's voice saying it, teasing. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I booked a hotel for the weekend, anywhere crowded, anywhere with locks I didn't buy myself. The hotel clerk gave me a small key card and a room on the 4th floor. The place smelled like industrial carpet cleaner, but at least it had people. The hum of conversations in the hallway was comforting. For the first time in weeks, I fell asleep before midnight. Then, at 2 a.m., someone knocked. It wasn't frantic or loud, just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I sat up, heart hammering. Another 3. I walked to the peephole and looked out. A woman stood there, maybe mid-40s, wearing a beige coat. Her face was blank, expressionless, like someone trying on a mask and forgetting how to blink. She stared directly at the door. No movement, no words. I didn't breathe. After about a minute, she turned and walked away. Her steps didn't echo on the carpet. When I went to the front desk the next morning, they said no one should have been on that floor. Every other room was vacant. That's when it clicked. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. It was design. Caleb used to talk about a forum online, a community he joined for men who wanted to reclaim control. I never knew what it was. I had half listened, thinking it was some self-help nonsense. Now, I wasn't so sure. What if he wasn't just watching me himself? What if he was teaching others to do it for him? I messaged his sister, desperate. She replied that Caleb had been in rehab for 6 weeks, no phone, no contact with the outside world. She sent me a photo of him holding a sobriety chip, face pale and sunken. So, it wasn't him, not directly, but somehow, it was still times him asterisk. I realized he didn't have to be the one standing outside my door. He just had to plant the idea somewhere people could find it. A story, a challenge, maybe even a game. After that, I saw faces everywhere. A barista humming his song, a delivery man staring too long, a woman on the subway mouthing sunshine with a faint smile. My mind tried to connect dots that maybe weren't there, but maybe they were. The night I finally left my apartment for good, I caught someone sitting on the stoop across the street, hoodie up, face lowered. As I passed, he said softly, "Cold out tonight, huh, sunshine?" My stomach dropped. I didn't look back. I moved again. New number, new haircut, new job. I stopped telling people where I lived. I thought maybe if I erased myself completely, they'd stop finding me. It worked for a while, until last week. I was walking home from a bookstore when a woman brushed past me and said, "Still hiding behind books, sunshine." She didn't stop or look at me, just kept walking. That's when I understood what Caleb really wanted. It was never about seeing me. It was about making sure I could never stop seeing times him. Asterisk. Every stranger's voice, every passing glance, every familiar phrase was a reminder that I didn't belong to myself anymore. He turned me into an echo chamber for his words. He didn't need to stalk me to control me. He'd already infected the world with his memory. Now, I avoid mirrors at night. I keep the blinds closed, but I feel their eyes, his eyes, through every gap. Maybe this will fade someday. Maybe it won't. Sometimes, I catch myself smiling back at strangers just to prove I'm not afraid. But deep down, I know that's exactly what he wanted. To make sure every face I see carries a piece of him. To make sure Sunshine never forgets who gave her the name. The garage looked harmless during the day. It was painted white, though the wood underneath had begun to splinter, and the lock on the door clicked loosely like an old man's jaw. From the front porch of the Airbnb, you could see it behind the main house, half hidden by tall grass and the faint shimmer of Lake Michigan stretching endlessly beyond. It didn't seem like the kind of place anything bad could happen. But then, night came and the garage turned into something else. There were 18 of us on that trip, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and parents. The main house was huge, beautiful, full of sunlight and laughter. But not everyone could fit. So 4 of us, me and my cousins Maria, Nikki, and Jasmine, were assigned to the detached garage. It had a small stairway leading to a second floor with a few beds and a tiny bathroom. When we first walked in, the smell hit us. Damp carpet, mold, old wood that had soaked up 100 Michigan winters. The light switches crackled when we flipped them. There was even carpet in the bathroom. Something about that felt immediately wrong. We tried to make the best of it. We washed the sheets, aired out the room, and decided to treat it like an adventure. After all, we were right by the beach. The first night was uneventful, bonfire, drinks, a game of cards. But the second night was when I started to feel that heaviness, the pressure in the chest that says you're being watched. My family joked that I have a sixth sense for bad things every time I get that feeling. Something weird happens. I brushed it off, but I couldn't shake it. Around midnight, I went downstairs to switch the laundry, our second load of bedding. The air was colder there, like someone had left the door open. I checked. It was locked, but the wind still whispered through cracks in the frame. I moved the sheets to the dryer, pressed start, and watched the metal drum spin until the hum of it felt hypnotic. Then I heard something shift outside. A scrape. A shuffle. Too deliberate to be wind. I held my breath and waited. Nothing. I told myself it was the breeze off the lake and went back upstairs. By 2:30 a.m., we were done with the laundry. The sheets were warm and smelled like detergent. We made our beds, laughing softly, teasing each other for being paranoid. Nikki insisted on leaving the lamp on. The others fell asleep quickly, but I stayed up scrolling my phone, half awake. I remember the exact time because the clock on my screen read 2:59 when the first bang came. It wasn't subtle. It sounded like something heavy, like a body slamming into the garage door. The metal shuddered. My heart stopped. I sat up, frozen, waiting for another. It came 20 seconds later, louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. My cousins didn't move. I whispered, "Did you hear that?" No answer. Just the slow, rhythmic tick of the wall clock. I almost convinced myself it was the wind, until the third hit came. This one was different. It rattled the entire building, made the glass in the small window tremble. Nikki sat up first. "What was that?" she whispered, voice already shaking. Maria sat up too, clutching her blanket. I said. It's the third time I've heard it. The word third hung in the air, because everyone knew what 3 a.m. meant. The devil's hour. We didn't believe in that stuff, not really, but belief isn't required for fear to exist. Nikki texted her mom, who was in the main house. It was 4:11 a.m. when she replied, realizing something was wrong. Moments later, we heard footsteps outside, crunching the gravel. A knock at the door. My uncle's voice. It's me. Open up. Relief hit like air after drowning. When we opened the door, my uncle stood there with my dad and 2 older cousins, flashlights cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw the look on his face, stern, alert. Not the look of someone who thought it was wind. Grab your things, he said. We're going to the main house. His voice left no room for argument. As we stuffed clothes into bags, he added, there's someone out here. That sentence burned into my brain. Someone. Not something. Someone. Back inside the main house, the rest of the family had gathered in the living room, some still half asleep. My aunt explained what had happened. My uncle went to check behind the garage and saw a man standing there. Not hiding. Not moving. Just standing. When my uncle called out, "Hey!" the man didn't flinch. Didn't run. Just stared. And then, in the space between one blink and the next, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound. The ground was covered in leaves, but there wasn't a single crunch. When they searched the area, there were no footprints, just stairs. Then, my brothers found something. 2 playing cards. Both were jesters, but not the kind you'd see in a normal deck. They were grotesque, one grinning wide, the other twisted in a silent scream. One was lying inside the garage near the stairs, the other on the floor in the main house's hallway. We tried to laugh it off as coincidence, but the air was too still for jokes. Someone whispered, "Jesters mock people. They laugh when you're scared." No one replied. We all stayed in the main house that night, sleeping on couches, floors, anywhere with people nearby. Around 4 a.m., my mom woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. She told me later that she kept her eyes closed, terrified she'd see someone looking in through the glass. Then came the sound of the basement door handle rattling. The boys were sleeping down there. She ran toward the noise, but by the time she got there, the steps had stopped. The door was still locked. The boys hadn't heard a thing. We left the Airbnb the next morning. My aunt said we were supposed to stay until Tuesday, but no one argued when she said we'd go home Monday instead. During the drive, we tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a neighbor, angry about noise. Maybe it was a prank, but my uncle kept shaking his head. He didn't move, he said quietly. Not even when I shouted. He just vanished. When I told my mom that I'd been going downstairs alone to do laundry, her face went pale. "That's when he saw you," she said. "He probably thought you were alone." I realized the timing lined up perfectly the last time I went downstairs. The sound started less than half an hour later. Whoever it was, they'd been watching. Later, we tried contacting the Airbnb host. She said she'd check the security camera above the garage door and get back to us. She never did. No message, no explanation. My aunt sent follow-up texts. Nothing. Eventually, she gave up. We joked that maybe the host knew the man, but no one really laughed. Some of us think it was something supernatural, the cards, the vanishing, the timing. Others, like me, think it was human, which is somehow worse. Because if it was a person, they're still out there, still waiting for the next group to rent that same garage. Now, whenever I hear a sudden bang at night, I feel it again, the weight of that silence afterward. The way fear doesn't just make you scream, it teaches you to listen for the moment when the sound stops. Because sometimes, that's when they're closest. They want to be seen. That's the thing no one tells you about being stalked, harassed, haunted, whatever word you choose. They don't hide. They don't lurk in shadows like movie villains. They step into your yard, they stand behind garages, they look straight through windows and into cameras. They want you to look back. They want you to know you're being watched. That's the part that breaks you. Not the danger itself, but the constant theater of intimidation. 3 stories, 3 different places, the same silent performance. In one, a couple moves into their dream home only to find the space around it already claimed. A man appears in the garden, a mask over his face, arms outstretched like a crucifix, the body language of a sermon. Police say it isn't illegal to stare. Two masked men come later, flashlights and a crowbar glinting like teeth. They're never caught. The couple start to sleep with shoes by the bed. The cat hides. The garden becomes a stage they no longer cross. In another, a woman leaves a controlling boyfriend, but finds his voice scattered across strangers. They repeat his phrases, mimic his private jokes, carry his scent like invisible ink. She changes her number, her hair, her address. She books a hotel to escape her apartment, and a blank-faced woman knocks on her door at 2 a.m. She realizes it isn't about surveillance in the old sense. It's a psychological vandalism. He doesn't need to follow her. He's turned her world into an echo chamber of himself. Every sunshine she hears is a little cut, a tiny reminder she can't escape him. And at a lakeside Airbnb, a garage becomes a trap for intuition. A young woman does laundry at night, unaware that someone is waiting. 3 thunderous bangs at exactly 3 a.m. shake the building. Her uncle sees a man behind the garage who doesn't move, doesn't flinch, then simply vanishes. 2 gesture cards appear like calling cards, one inside the garage, one in the main house. The second night, footsteps on the porch, a basement door rattling while boys sleep behind it. By the third day, the family leaves early, carrying the image of a man who didn't run when spotted and left no footprints behind. What ties these nights together isn't proof of the supernatural, or even evidence of crime. It's the choreography of fear. People or something using presence as a weapon. They don't have to break the door to enter your mind. They only have to stand there long enough that you start filling in the blanks yourself. Every creak becomes a footstep, every shadow a figure, every knock a test of how far you'll go before calling for help. They make you a participant in your own terror. It's easy for outsiders to say just move or just call the police, but moving doesn't erase the memory of faces at your window, and police can't arrest someone for standing in the dark. The real damage isn't physical, it's temporal. They colonize your time. Nights become countdowns to noises. Days become scanning crowds for familiar eyes. Even sleep becomes performance lying still, pretending not to hear. The worst part is how ordinary it feels at first. A neighbor staring from a window. A stranger using a familiar nickname. A noise you can almost explain. It's slow, patient, cumulative. By the time you realize you're in danger, the fear is already part of your routine. You're already double locking doors, already checking cameras, already rehearsing escape routes in your head. You start to live as though you're on a stage, and everyone else knows their lines except you. I think about the man in the mask, arms out like a crucifix. About the pale woman at the hotel door, silent and unblinking. About the man behind the garage, vanishing into nothing but leaving 2 cards like a joke you're not supposed to get. Different people maybe, different motives, but the same ritual. Stand still, watch, wait, imprint yourself. Let them imagine what you might do next. That's why these stories feel like they belong together. They aren't random incidents. They're a pattern, a warning. They show how fragile the idea of safety really is, how easy it is to slip from at home to on display. They show how presence can be used as violence, how watching can be an act of intrusion. There's a moment in every story where the narrator says some version of why us, but that's not the right question. It's not about times who times you are. It's about times where times you are. You're alone. It's late. The barrier between public and private space has a crack in it, a missing fence, a weak lock, a detached garage, a past someone won't let go of. That's all it takes. Opportunity. They step through and stand there, waiting for you to look. If you've never worked a night shift or stayed awake at 3 a.m., listening to your own heartbeat, it's hard to understand how thin the walls feel. But if you have, you know the dread in these stories isn't exaggerated. You know that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what happens next. It's how long they can stand there doing nothing, and how much of yourself you give away while waiting for them to move. They don't always break in. Sometimes they just wait until you stop watching. When you live through something like this, people love to give you advice. Move somewhere safer. Get more locks. Buy cameras. Call the police. But none of that fixes the part of you they took. Because what these stories really show isn't just danger, it's erosion. Little by little, they take your ability to feel safe in your own skin. That's the horror that lingers after the noise stops. For the couple in the house, safety was supposed to mean a fence, a door, a camera. Yet the real invasion wasn't when the man with the mask stepped into their yard. It was when they started expecting him to. When silence became suspicious. When peace felt like a lie. For the woman called Sunshine, it wasn't the strangers' faces that destroyed her calm, but the familiarity in their words. Her ex didn't need to break into her apartment to control her. He broke into her world. Every passerby could be another messenger, another version of said, him. And for the family by the lake, it wasn't just the banging at 3 a.m. that haunted them. It was how the world refused to make sense afterward. How a man could vanish without leaving footprints, yet leave behind the weight of his presence. We all want to believe we know evil when we see it, that it wears a certain face, moves a certain way. But these stories prove otherwise. Sometimes, evil doesn't chase you. It waits. It learns your routine. It figures out the right time to make you doubt yourself. And once you start doubting, it doesn't have to do anything else. You do the rest. You build your own cage. Maybe that's why these moments feel more terrifying than any ghost story. Because they're not about death. They're about how easily someone can rewrite your idea of safety. About how quickly home can start to feel like a set built for someone else's amusement. About how the simple act of being watched can be its own kind of violence. But here's the truth the watchers don't understand. Fear might make you small, but it also makes you aware. It sharpens your edges. It teaches you to listen not to the noise, but to the quiet. You start noticing what's wrong, what's missing, what doesn't belong. And when you do, you reclaim something they can't take. Awareness isn't paranoia, it's survival. So tonight, before you sleep, close your blinds, lock the doors, listen, not for what you expect to hear, but for what shouldn't be there. And if you ever feel eyes on you from the dark, don't look away, because the moment you stop watching, that's when they move.
Keep a light on.
This is Asterix Asterix Midnight Nocturne, Asterix Asterix, where true horror lives in the ordinary. If you've ever felt the weight of unseen eyes, you're not alone. Subscribe, stay vigilant, and remember, the night is watching back.